Welcome to Conversations with Colorado Gifted. Tonight we have Kim Smith and Lisa Rogers. Kim is a secondary math curriculum and learning design specialist in Grand Junction. She has almost 30 years in education and has served pre-K through 12 students and teachers in many different capacities. She's the current vice president of the Colorado Council of Teachers of Mathematics and past president of Colorado Math Leaders. She's had the opportunity to collaborate, learn from, and serve math educators across the state of Colorado and beyond. And also Lisa Rogers. Lisa is a student achievement coordinator in Fountain Fort Carson School District 8. In this role, she serves pre-K through 12th grade students as coordinator for math, science, and gifted education. She's the current secretary of Colorado Council of Teachers of Mathematics and a past president of Colorado Math Leaders. And she has had the honor of collaborating with and learning from math educators across the state and the nation. Welcome, Lisa and Kim, for developing mathematical thinking in gifted learners through routines.
Well, thank you, Mark. Thanks for having us. We're so happy to be here and so grateful for all of you who are joining us live, as well as those of you who are going to watch the recording. So with that, we're going to go ahead and dive in and get started tonight. So as Mark said, we're Lisa and Kim, and we're so glad to be here. You can see our contact information at the bottom. We'll provide that at the end of the presentation again as well. So please feel free to reach out with questions or comments or ideas to share with us.
So here are outcomes for this session. If you've joined for a CAGT in-person session or engaged with us with any of our recordings, you'll recognize these outcomes. You may be also familiar with some of the routines, but we revised the content and the applications in order to bring some novelty to the presentation. So you will experience a variety of math routines to promote lateral thinking, productive discourse, and differentiated instruction. And at the end, you will gain access to additional resources that you can use right away. So what are reasoning routines? This definition comes to us from Grace Kalamenic and Amy Lucenta with Fostering Math Practices. Math routines build capacity in ourselves as educators and in our students. These specific, predictable, and repeatable routines provide structure that students and teachers can count on. The content and stimuli may change, but students know what to expect and how to interact with the content in a way that enables teachers to step out of the middle.
One of the things we also like to highlight when we talk about routines is the importance of think time. Something that we know is that all students benefit and need think time. Too often, many of our gifted students equate speed or having an immediate idea with their giftedness. One of our goals through routines is to help students to slow down and stop focusing so much on the answer. We know that often our gifted students, we're trying to facilitate a discussion, we're trying to think about the mathematics that's involved or how they're thinking about the mathematics. And then our students just say, yeah, but is it right? So how do we get our students to move away from that, but is it right question? And so one of the ways that we can do that is slowing down, giving ample think time to make sure that our students know the importance of processing. And so one of the analogies that we like to give is that sometimes students are going to have crockpot ideas and sometimes they're going to have microwave ideas. And both are valid, right? If I'm going to get ready to cook a pot roast, I don't know about you, but I've never effectively cooked a pot roast in the microwave. It has to go in the crock pot. It needs that time to marinate and simmer and take its time. But the flip side is, if I'm gonna make some popcorn, you better believe I am throwing that in the microwave, and after about 2 minutes, I'm gonna have my delicious snack ready to go. So helping our students to recognize that sometimes they will have those quick ideas, and they're often really stellar ideas, right? But if we want them to slow down and think about it and have a crockpot idea as well, that there's value in both of those. And so our goal throughout all of these routines is to really validate and value the thinking process.
So let's talk about student discourse. Student discourse moves students from me and I to we in a more collaborative model. The one who is doing the talking is doing the thinking and the learning. Talk can reveal understanding and misunderstanding, and as educators, we need to be good listeners to the student discourse. Student discourse supports deeper reasoning, promotes language and vocabulary development, and we want to build capacity with students to ask the questions and initiate the conversations and consistently remind ourselves as teachers to never say anything a kid can say. This allows the conversations to flow freely and again, for us to step out of the middle and that deep thinking and discourse to happen with students. You can see examples of sentence stems and sentence frames on this slide. It is important to provide this scaffolding for students as they learn to engage in productive discourse and conversations.
So for this slide, we want to acknowledge and recognize that too often we think about math as living just in the convergent or the critical thinking realm. It can, but through these routines, we also want to open up our understanding of mathematics to recognize that math also lives in the world of divergent thinking. The routines that we're going to share in this presentation are going to cause students to use both the convergent and the divergent thinking, or in other words, lateral thinking, where they're using both together and really thinking outside the box. We know that this is good for students who are identified gifted in math, but it's also really good for students who are identified gifted in other areas. Think about your students who are identified in the areas of creativity or general intellectual ability. Students who maybe traditionally, while they are identified gifted, don't consider themselves as good at math. One of the things that we hope to accomplish through these routines is to expand students' understanding about what it means to be good at mathematics.
So this slide shows us a visual that leads to low floor, high ceiling thinking. Low floor, high ceiling tasks are those that all students can access, but that can be extended to high levels. In contrast, a low floor, low ceiling task can leave some students feeling bored and underserved, and there could be some unreached potential. On the other hand, high floor, high ceiling tasks can leave some students frustrated, intimidated, or unable to start. The intentional design of a low floor, high ceiling routine provides a starting place for every student to engage. And a lot of times in these routines, there is not one correct answer. If there happens to be a correct answer, there are many diverse ways for students to get there and multiple pathways for engagement.
One other thing that we're going to highlight throughout the routines tonight is connections to depth and complexity. So one of the things that's really nice about these math routines is that they truly are easily differentiated using the depth and complexity icons. So please be on the lookout as we highlight several of the icons that could be used with each routine. Also, so that we can show how questioning utilizes these icons and how it can deepen opportunities for differentiation.
So now we are going to dive into our first routine. It's called Which One Doesn't Belong? And this routine involves students seeing 4 images or stimuli in each of 4 quadrants in a grid. You can see an example on this slide. Students will observe all 4 options and then answer the question, which one doesn't belong? The website devoted to this routine offers a variety of images appropriate for learners kindergarten through 12th grade and beyond, and it also categorizes them into numbers, shapes, and graphs and equations. With the Which One Doesn't Belong routine, there is not one correct answer, as students learn and are validated by the diverse ideas presented in the classroom and presented by their peers. The power isn't in the answer students select, but in their rationale and reasoning for the selection. There is each of the stimuli in each of the 4 quadrants could absolutely be a correct answer in this situation. When we look at depth and complexity, you can see some icons up there. The details icon, routines encourage students to focus on the details of each picture and the stimulus. What details did your brain gravitate toward and why? We think about multiple perspectives. How might different people look at the picture in different ways? How might someone who is colorblind respond differently than someone who isn't? and the language of the discipline. This one is big for this routine. How can you utilize rich mathematics vocabulary to justify your response for which one doesn't belong? In the next slide, I've presented several different examples of stimuli for which one doesn't belong. When facilitating this routine with students, I will sometimes preface with a quick vocabulary review that might push students to attend to precision and explain their mathematical thinking more in depth. When facilitating this routine, I also practice wait time and encourage students to think independently before I have them turn and talk with a partner. This gives students an opportunity to talk about their thinking before making that thinking public. When we look at the stimuli on the screen, you see a variety of pieces and which one doesn't belong images that could span many different grade levels, and you see many different representations. I really have enjoyed using with my middle school students the fractions, decimals, and percents comparisons. And sometimes if students can see something on the screen to give them something to talk about, gives them a little added boost.
Thanks, Kim. Did you have anything else you wanted to wrap up with which one doesn't belong?
Nope, I am just really excited. Which one doesn't belong is one of my favorite routines, but Lisa is also presenting, and I think they've all become my favorites in this work, Lisa. So I'm really excited for you to present our slow reveal graph, and I'll let you take that away.
Thank you. I agree, Kim. I love which one doesn't belong. I love all these routines, so it's just exciting to be able to share them all with you. So our next routine that we're going to take a look at is slow reveal graphs. This is a routine that comes from Jenna Labe, a K-8 math specialist who lives in the Boston area. There are also multiple additional contributors who work to develop these routines. As we said at the beginning, in the end, we're going to provide you with a QR code that will give you links to websites that already have pre-made slide decks or pre-made images or things that you can use for all of the routines that we're talking about today. And Slow Reveal Graphs is no different. So Slow Reveal Graphs is an instructional routine that is about promoting sense making about data. This routine uses scaffolded visuals and discourse to help students make sense of data. As more and more of the graph is revealed, students refine their interpretation and construct meaning, often in very surprising ways. So anyone who knows me knows that I am super passionate about this routine because I think that data and data analysis is something that is so important for our students, K-12, as we think about them transitioning and just being good members of society. And I think that's really justified with this next statement that from a Forbes article from August 2022, data literacy was listed as the #2 most in-demand job skill, which I just think that's fascinating, right? Like any job out there, #2 in-demand skill is data literacy. And this is a great way to help develop and build that with our students. So each slide that you're going to see is going to provide students with an opportunity to notice and wonder about the provided graphical representation, and then consider how their understanding is changing as they learn new information. This routine is a great routine for helping students connect to the depth and complexity icons of language of the discipline again, so great opportunities for rich math discourse. And it's also an opportunity for students to see patterns, trends, as well as unanswered questions as we continue to reveal more and more of the graph. For today's example, we're going to go ahead and take a look at a picture graph. So for the first slide, we're always going to give you just kind of the bare minimum amount of information. And the questions we want to ask students are, what do you notice? And what do you wonder? So we want to give students that rich think time, possibly give them an opportunity to jot down some notes, maybe make a T-chart of some noticings and some wonderings, and then open up that opportunity, as Kim mentioned earlier, for some of those discourse moves. So thinking about how to do some pair share, how to potentially get students' voices into the room whole group. Once we've had an opportunity to do that, I'm going to continue clicking through slides to reveal more and more of the picture graph information. So now that I've clicked to the new slide, I want to ask the question of what new information did we just learn? And then think about the question of what do you think that each heart icon represents? Again, think about where are those opportunities to give students think time, where are those opportunities to build in some pair share or small group discussion, and really challenging students with that question of why. So once my students have had a chance to think about this, I go ahead and I'm going to continue to reveal more information. So thinking about the question of what does each heart represent, I might challenge my students to say, well, were we correct in our prediction? Did we think it was going to be 10 beats per minute? Why or why not? What data may have led us to believe that? And then starting to share with students, are you surprised by any of the reveals of any of the quantities? I mean, we're going all the way from 10 beats per minute. If a heart is 10 beats per minute, we're going all the way from 10 beats per minute on the right-hand side. And then as I work my way backwards all the way to the left-hand side, 1,200 beats per minute. Thinking about, is that surprising to you? Why or why not? Again, once my students have had more time to talk, discuss, think about this, we're going to keep slow revealing more and more of the graph. So then I would pose the question, what new information did we just learn? How does this new information change our thinking about the graph? So now that's that opportunity to potentially get my students talking about, oh, we've introduced a new variable. Why might this be important? Why might we care about this? Once we've again had an opportunity to debrief, let's see what more we can reveal from our graph. So again, what new information did we just learn? So now we've introduced some animals. How does it change your thinking about this graph? Is it in line with what you were thinking we might be talking about with beats per minute? Maybe, maybe not. And now I might start to try and synthesize some of this information. How do we now interpret all the things that we're starting to reveal? And I might pose to my students, what do you think this graph is about? How could you describe it in your own words? What would your own explanation look like? So now we've just introduced a title, heartbeats per minute and body weight. So how are we connecting those? And now I might challenge my students to think about which column do you think might represent the cat? How about a horse? How about a mouse? Thinking about where does that think time fit? How am I crafting this discussion and making sure that my students get that opportunity to make predictions? Thinking about the patterns that they're noticing, the trends, coming back to some of those depth and complexity icons. So once my students have maybe started to make a prediction, maybe there's a little healthy competition going on between what students think about where the cat might be, horse, mouse. Again, we're going to give a big reveal. And so now that my students have a chance to check their thinking, they have a bigger data set representing these different animals. They know the number of beats per minute that their heart is beating. They know their approximate or average weight. So now I might ask the question, what do you notice about the relationship between the number of heartbeats in a minute and the size of these animals? Again, think about the think time, think about those opportunities for pair shares and discussion. Again, as we start to reveal more information, I might challenge my students to think about what animal do you think might be represented in the column furthest to the right? What do you think that 10 beats per minute paired with 200 tons could represent? And why do you think that? What predictions might they make? So once we have some good predictions in the room, Get ready for some of those final reveals. So once we have our blue whale as maybe our largest animal with the slowest heartbeat represented, helping students to maybe fill in some of the blanks. So if a blue whale has 10 beats per minute, what species do you think maybe has a heartbeat of 30 beats per minute, 70 beats per minute? And then all the way down on the left, 800 beats per minute and 1,200 beats per minute. What types of animals might we be talking about here? Once our students, again, have that opportunity to think through this, we continue with our reveals. And at this point on the last slide, we finally have our full picture graph represented so that our students finally have every bit of information and really start that opportunity to get students to make those rich connections. What statements can we make about the relationship between the size of an animal and the number of heartbeats it has per minute? Why do you think that this relationship might be a relationship? And what is the function of a heartbeat? Why might that function be related to the weight of an animal? So really getting our students to then come out of the mathematics classroom and make some of those bigger real world connections, as we know is the power of sharing data with our students. So this is a slow reveal graph. And I just want to emphasize again, Kim and I are simply ambassadors of this work. What is beautiful about the mathematics community is that there are so many amazing educators who believe so strongly in these routines and this work that they create these slide decks, they create these images, and they put them out there freely available for the world to use. So we will make sure that you are connected with the websites at the end of this and just want to honor the work that these individuals are doing. The other thing that I want to acknowledge about slow reveal graphs is that this is in part such a powerful routine because these infographics and the graphs and the scatter plots and all of the data that's available on slow reveal graphs come from out there in the real world, right? These are things that are accurate. They are taken from high quality sources. So they're accurate. And so it really is a great opportunity for our students to see how data is really used in the real world. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and conclude slow reveal graphs and turn it back over to Kim for our last routine.
Thank you, Lisa. Every moment that you provided wait time, I just wanted to jump in there with an answer, and you could probably hear me gasping in the background when you were revealing that information. So that was definitely a great routine that I love as well. Would you rather math is this routine is near and dear to my heart as well, as they all are. So this is a popular non-math game. We play Would You Rather Eat Slugs or jelly beans? It's usually two really disgusting things, actually, but I don't really love, especially the black jelly beans. So we have John Stevens, again, someone that's so generous in the math community, to thank for mathematizing and creating a website. On this website, there are opportunities and options for K through 12, kindergarten through 12th grade mathematicians. And in this routine, students are presented with two different stimuli or situations, and we ask them to choose a path and justify it with math. This routine connects perfectly with the standards for mathematical practice number 3, construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. And like many of the other routines, there is not one correct answer. It's all about reasoning and justifying. When we look at those depth and complexity icons, we can really call out, looking at this work across disciplines, how might someone from a different discipline or career respond differently? For example, do you think someone laying sod might respond differently to someone building the fence? It's, again, all of these routines support the language of the discipline and that rich mathematics vocabulary we see represented in the questions, and then the vocabulary we might use in our justification. Sometimes these routines leave us with some unanswered questions, and you might have to answer or think about some of those questions before making your decision. So we're looking at an image right now, And the question is, would you rather evenly split the remaining brownies in scenario A with 5 friends or scenario B with 6 friends? And again, there is some mathematics required in these, but students are justifying with, as long as they can justify it, either with mathematics or without, the mathematics comes out in their conversations. But what also might be illuminated with brownies is, well, are they gluten-free? Are they not gluten-free? I would choose less brownies, the scenario that gives me less brownies because I don't even like them. Or I would choose the scenario that gives me the most brownies because they are my favorite. So there's lots of different ways to think about the math. This one really focuses on fractions and that idea of sharing. In this one, you'll see the sentence stem on the screen so that you can at least provide that scaffolding for students who might need a place to start with what they're talking about. So for this one, the question is, would you rather have 8 quarters or 2 $1 bills? 8 quarters or 2 $1 bills? Now, if we think about that mathematics just a little bit, we can think about the mathematics that there are 4 quarters in $1. So maybe there's 8 quarters in $2. This is a place where you give kids think time. You have them turn to talk about their answers. A lot of times I'll have the group stand up. One side of the room is the quarters, one side of the room are the dollar bills. And in this case, students really have to justify their thinking. A lot of times students will say, even if the coins are less, I don't want to carry around all those coins in my pocket. Or I would rather have the coins to either put in the parking meter or at the laundromat, or I just want those dollar bills. So much easier to manage. So there are many different ways that students can justify their thinking using the mathematics and using that rich vocabulary. Here are just a couple more images from the Would You Rather Math website, and you'll get all of those resources from our generous math educators when we are finished. And you can see some of the different concepts. We're looking at percentages, and if we have order 3 pizzas on separate checks, or if we order 3 pizzas on the same check and split the cost. So really thinking about the different ways that that kids can justify their thinking. We're looking at area and perimeter, and again, those equal shares with the cake A, the birthday cakes. So giving those students time to think, time to reason. And with the Would You Rather math, there are activities or images that I would have students think about mentally and move from one side of the room to the other. But there would be pieces that you would give them extra think time. Like we always do the pizza pie piece on Pie Day, and we give kids time to think and time to take notes and time to draft their defenses of which option they would choose, and then presents those to the class. So there's lots of different ways that you can facilitate Would You Rather, but it really promotes that math practice. Number 3, construct viable arguments, and then critiquing the reasoning of others. So that's Would You Rather in a nutshell, and you can get lost in the website. It took me a while to realize that when you click on there's at least 11 pages of Would You Rather activities for students to engage with. So, all right, Would You Rather?
Thanks, Kim. So with that, that brings us to the end of the routines that we had planned to share with you. But those 3 routines, the Would You Rather math that Kim just did, the which one doesn't belong from the beginning, and the slow reveal graphs from the middle are all contained on the document that you can access through the QR code that is currently on your screen. It will give you a document that has those 3 routines and where you can find resources for them, as well as many other of our favorite routines. There's so many great things out there, and so we couldn't just, even though we only had time for 3 today, we couldn't limit ourselves to just sharing those 3. So please definitely take a look at this resource link and check out some of the really great things that are out there to engage students, again, with thinking about math potentially in a more creative way, and really thinking about those opportunities to build some of those affective skills with our students too, right? That math isn't just about rushing and finding an answer, that there are these really great opportunities to collaborate and listen to the ideas of others. And so it's a great opportunity to build some executive functioning skills in our students as well. So with that, we'll go to our last slide.
All right. So everyone out there, or if you're listening to this recording later, we just want to thank you for joining us for this presentation. We hope that you find these routines and resources helpful and are excited for more students to experience the power of math routines. We would like to leave you with a couple of closing questions to ponder. So thinking about the routines you saw today, which routine are you most excited to try in your classroom or setting? And how might you integrate these routines with your district provided resources? Those are 2 questions we'd like to leave you with. We do have our contact information here, so please feel free to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or to share your experiences having to go with one of these routines. Lisa and I would love, we get emails after some of these presentations, and it's so exciting to hear how this work is traveling out into the hands and the minds of students. So we would love to hear.
So I know it's good when I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I want to know. It's like, I want to try that. I want to do that. I want to be that kid, or I want to be the teacher teaching it, because it's, I think especially the reveal graph. I love that idea. And I was like, okay, what animal? First of all, what are we talking about here? What can be 1,200 beats a minute? That's crazy. And just all these thoughts going through my head as an adult, that it seems like some of these things that could really, I mean, if you threw this into a high school class, you're still going to get a good response with them, it seems like to me.
Yeah, Mark, that is one of our favorite things about these routines is that, yes, we can absolutely find content that is relevant to your grade level or the standards that you're currently teaching, but because of the rich thinking that's taking place, so many of these tasks, just they lend themselves to multiple grade levels. And it's so funny, Mark, what you just mentioned about the slow reveal graph. I mean, that's a picture graph. And if you look at the math standards, picture graphs, I mean, they live in like the first, second, third grade math standards for data, but taking a look at the scale of that picture graph could be just as relevant for high school, right? And making some of those rich science connections, biology. I mean, I could see that happening in a biology class in high school, right? To think about what's the connection between heartbeats per minute and size of an animal, and why would that relationship exist? So it's just exciting to think about the possibilities.
Well, yeah, and in such a visual world, you open up a magazine now and they're so visual. Of course, there's text in a magazine, but they're so visual, like Time magazine. So many pictographs, so many opportunities to engage with math. You don't really think that you're engaging with math necessarily when you're looking at a pictograph, however you are. I love the idea of that. I want to ask you thoughts on a couple questions about gifted kids. And I love the way you've helped us understand how to slow kids down, on how to engage with reasoning, how to engage with data literacy, and to participate in the discussion and to do the processing. That's all so important. I think gifted kids, it's like they want to go fast, they want to go fast, they want to go fast, they want to just get the answer. And I'm going to flip that just a little bit. When do you think, like, when should we let the kids speed up? When should we encourage them to speed up? When should we encourage them to go fast? And just flipping it onto the other side.
I think that's a great question, Mark. Kim, do you have an idea?
Well, it just takes me back to the crock pot and the microwave, and I think there is a time and a place for students to be able to express that explicit answer, to do calculations, and know if they're correct or ask if they're correct, and to do that in a timely manner. And I really feel like that the structure of these routines lends they lend themselves to that wait time, but then kids can start to shift so that they're not always working quickly. But I go back to that crock pot and microwave slide. That's where I thought about that, Lisa, immediately when Mark was talking about that.
Yeah, I would love to add on to that, Kim, because I completely agree. And as I think about the three routines that we shared today, I think about which one doesn't belong. Because I think for all of us, when we see a which one doesn't belong, our brains immediately, like often very quickly, go to an initial idea, right? And we want to celebrate that initial idea. But as we think about speed and sometimes that excitement for students and wanting to just encourage them to keep going, thinking about, okay, so you came up with an initial idea. Can you now potentially come up with an idea for each of the four stimuli of why each one might potentially not belong? And what's your rationale? And then potentially get students to go back to it and say, okay, so if you came up with an idea for all four about why all four might have a reason to not belong, which one's your favorite and why? Was it the first answer that you thought of? Was it the one you thought of the fastest? Or when you thought about it in more depth, was there another answer or another reason that you liked even better for a different reason? And so being able to even help challenge our students to think about, when are those ideas that you loved your speed and your quickness, or were there other times where there was even value in slowing down and taking your time? And so being able to elevate and celebrate both.
Really like that explanation because I jumped to an answer right away too. And it's so I think it's so valuable to teach that there isn't just one right answer. And it's like, okay, you got an answer, but you're not, guess what? You're not done. It's like, I want to be done. Hey, I'm done. Give me the next problem. You're not done. Let's think about this. Let's process this. And it keeps bringing kids back into that processing, because we don't want them to be rushing and hurrying and going and going and going and going. And that's, we know that sometimes that's good, but it's not necessarily healthy mathematical thinking, is it? So I love your explanation for that. Well, let me let me end it with one more. I'll throw a softball out there to you. So, if you were going to start changing some routines, like where would you start changing a routine? Where would your entry point be?
I once heard some brilliant math educators in a podcast talk about this, and they started their role in districts as math content specialists. They didn't have a resource, they didn't have anything really to stand on, and they took a routine, one like a which one doesn't belong or a would you rather, and they started with one routine one time a week. And that's what we encourage teachers to do, is to think, maybe we'll do would you rather Wednesday, or which one doesn't belong Tuesday. Maybe we'll do slow reveal graphs on Thursday. But if you start with one, and a lot of times we'll build these in as warm-ups, and then they start to expand. But thinking about one day, one routine, one warm up, and that's always a really nice way to start. And it starts to condition kids to this way of talking and waiting and thinking and marinating. And it really helps build that culture and put those conditions in place that then you can start to introduce more routines as time allows. And we are sometimes crunched in our classrooms with that bell time, especially in our secondary classrooms. So just starting small and building that muscle memory with kids so that these routines become second nature. And so, Lisa, I wonder if you have anything that you might add to that?
Kim, I feel like you were reading my mind. So I agree with everything Kim said. You know, sometimes it's about starting small or it's finding something. Just again, I'm so passionate about all these routines, but just from a time perspective, you know, a which one doesn't belong or a would you rather, you know, those can often be 5 to 10 minute routines, depending on how much questioning or conversation or different things that you want to put in. So thinking about, is there one task maybe that you have in your daily lesson that you're like, I'm crazy about this, and thinking about maybe putting one of these shorter routines in as a warm up or something. And so just thinking about what is that opportunity to start to get kids to think differently. Because again, I think the power of which one doesn't belong and would you rather is that there isn't a right answer, right? And so it's that opportunity to maybe shift students' mindsets away from math is just about calculating to, oh, what is my rationale? What's my justification? And really thinking about that constructing of an argument, because one thing we know about students constructing arguments is that that is a skill that is important in every discipline, right? Students need to construct arguments in language arts. They need to do it in science. They need to do it in math. They need to do it in social studies, right? And so thinking about that opportunity to give students something that, let's be honest, many of our gifted students, they really love to argue anyways. And so giving them that opportunity to argue about something that's content related.
Well, Lisa and Kim, this is going to be such an important part of our archive on the Colorado Gifted website. Um, and as you might know, that a lot of school districts are starting to offer our conversations with CAGT as a way to build up recertification, relicensing hours. And it's becoming more and more popular, and this is going to be a really important go-to. We have a lot of presentations about the nature of needs of gifted. We have a lot of presentations about social emotional aspects, and they're all wonderful presentations. This is one of those pieces that's very content specific and very much what can I do tomorrow to support my gifted learners. And I think it's going to be a very popular choice. So if I'm saying this after you've watched it, I was right, wasn't I? I was right. Um, next week, 2 weeks from now, 2 Tuesdays from now, on March 19th, we're going to have Catherine Fishman Weaver and Jill Klingen speaking about teaching women's and gender studies in the gifted and talented classroom. So join us back in 2 weeks. And once again, Lisa and Kim, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. We're crossing associations here. We've got the gifted and talented associations with the math teachers associations, and what a wonderful partnership this one has been. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thank
letting
you.
me. We appreciate it.